my last year in high school, but in your mind, I'm always going to be the fat kid. So every time you see me, you think I've lost all this weight when actually, like, I weigh the same as the last time you saw me. That's not the mental image. So, people frame you in a certain way. Mm-hmm. So this guy's talking about wanting to be perceived as attractive. And that's what his goal was. That's his reason is because he wants people to think he's hot. I'm simplifying it, but I'm like, that's not within you. That's not profound. That's not enduring. Once I stopped being seen as the fat kid, and if that was my reason for losing weight, I went to college, no one knew me as the fat kid. So all of a sudden, if that was my motivation, guess what? I ended up gaining back half the weight because my motivation was gone. I wasn't in touch with what really mattered. So, what I started to talk him through is like we kept going back and forth about, well, why do you want them to think that you're hot? And he's like, well, I want them to, like going back and forth, like he wants to be with a woman that he's attracted to. So that, I get it, but we're back and forth in this very physical thing. And so I keep pushing him, and it ultimately gets down to things about being alone. And we start to pick into his parents' relationship. And, they're split up and they're both alone and they're both really unhappy. And they're like, you start to understand, all right, there's like family emotional trauma in this. And there's so much deeper action in this thought than just, I want girls to think I'm hot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's what that back and forth and the digging into it. Like you can't just answer it on the surface and be done. You have to keep pushing on it.
Yeah, no shit. And I think that this concept, the fact that there's more to just about every type of real emotion or thing that we think that we want, there's always something deeper to it. Like what's the really root cause of that? And finding that out, I think, can be really profound and effective in helping you to obtain those goals and get to that place of, it's not just like you said, like, losing weight so you look good or you look hot, or, women perceive you're attractive. It's a deeper emotion. It's connected to something even more profound and powerful than just, looking in the mirror or walking by and getting some smiles from women. It's there's something connected to that that's a lot stronger.
Yeah.
And I think figuring out what that is can be very beneficial.
Yeah. And some people are scared by it, like the monetary stuff, like, having a great job or buying a nice car or whatever. That's usually, ultimately, it's a signal of something else. And so you start to pick into it, and it's like, growing up, money was a problem. My dad was out of work for 3 years, or, whatever their story was. And you start to understand it's not about the material stuff. On the surface, they genuinely think that because they're not willing to face the deeper stuff that's like, are you even in touch with that insecurity you felt as a kid? Like, have you worked through that yet? That's actually what's driving you here. You want to be financially stable, and that car is just a symbol of it.
Yeah.
So it's like, and that's scary for some people. Like, they don't want to face, that kind of pain. And growing up in the Boston area, like, there's plenty of neighborhoods where you don't talk about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like, you don't get in touch with, like, oh, I felt insecure when I was 7. Like, dude, what's your problem?
Yeah.
Like,
Quit being a
wouldn't
pussy.
Yeah, but the reality is that's what's going on inside of you. And if you don't get in touch with that, then, like, you can still live your life and be fine, but I don't want to be fine. I always say, like, I was an employee of my life. I was the guy working there. Like, that's not exciting. But if you get in touch with these things, if you understand them, and if you know how to harness the power of it to drive you to do something else, then you start really achieving. Then the walls come down. That's what's exciting for me.
Yeah, and especially with guys, like, we're kind of joking around here about what other guys from Boston might say, or other parts of the country for sure. But guys especially tend to suppress a lot of emotions, tend to suppress a lot of things that they've grown up with and haven't been able to talk about with, say, their father or their parents or their siblings or other, friends that they have. Because, like you said, I mean, as funny as it is, calling people names and making fun of each other for having emotions when you're younger, those things, they don't just disappear. They get stored away in you somewhere, someplace. They get repressed, and those things fester, and they tend to certainly come out later in life in different ways. And a lot of the time, like you said, you can't really pinpoint what it is or what, why you have different emotions or feelings towards things. But it certainly comes from the way we develop and the way that we're conditioned when we're young, especially at a younger age, between, say, 4, 5, 6 years old to when you're a teenager. Like, that is when you're hanging around a lot of kids, and that's where you pick up on a lot of things. And and a young person's mind, young man's mind especially, having a lot of those emotions suppressed and deeply rooted into you without ever checking back on them, I think can cause a lot of harm later in life. What I'm curious, so what did the client that you worked with there, the guy, what was his actual reason for wanting to get in shape? Did you ever like figure out what it was, like the root cause of it?
Yeah, so it was very much rooted in his parents' divorce, and having gone through that myself, I had a different reason for that affecting me, but I understood, divorce and talking about kids at that age, like kids just have one basic need, and that's to be cared for, especially at a really early age because they can't care for themselves.
Okay.
So that was harmed for both of us, and that led to different kinds of anxiety and issues for us. But for him, it went down the path of feeling like things aren't going to be okay, which is that like basic child need, and then watching how his parents were alone and the sort of like the spiral that led to. And he was watching it unfold. Like he was too young to really understand it at the time, but the connections were there for him because he was watching it. And so as he got older, like he never worked through any of that, but he could understand it. And so we started to talk about it, and he got it. Like his sense of the negatives of being in a dysfunctional relationship or being solitary were really, really strong, and were scaring the shit out of him. And he didn't understand that at like the conscious level, like having a conversation with him until we started to push. He couldn't really get in touch with that. He just had these like very superficial relationships. He was all about looks. Because to him it was all about attraction and not the underlying dynamic of the relationship. So it went from I want to be like, I want to look good and meet a girl at a bar or whatever, to like, yeah, I want to look good because I don't want them to look at me and be like, whatever. But I need to be good also. So it wasn't just about working on, like he was a very superficial person. So it stopped being just about like, being a buff metrosexual is kind of what he was. Like it's like he was like coiffed and he looked great, but there was no substance to him. So he'd go on a date and have a conversation, and it was like basically either totally empty, there was nothing there, or it was just about him because he's just focused on his looks. And so we started to work through, like, as we worked through the emotional stuff and the background stuff and how that was affecting him and what his values were, he actually became a more complete person. And it wasn't even like we had to do specific steps to make him a better date. It just kind of happened because he was growing. Like, I think that was, I hope he doesn't mind me saying this, like, I think that was a really pivotal maturing moment for him. Because he came into adulthood is what that was. And he still has more growing to do and all that, but like that's where he stopped being like a 19-year-old, even though he was like 26 or something, and he started to be, a young adult. And that, like, when you're dating women in their later 20s versus late teens, they're less looking for like, they're more looking for someone who's an adult because they're starting to think differently about things. And so he started to naturally appeal more to people because there was like, oh, I'm sitting across from a real guy right now. Not like, wow, he's hot. Oh my God, there's nothing between his ears, which is kind of what and he actually was a pretty intelligent guy, but that's what the interpretation was initially. So it comes like you start discovering yourself and understanding your values more. Like you're naturally a more interesting person, a more complete person. So people will take to you. And if they don't, actually, there's nothing wrong with that because you've just weeded out someone who you're just not compatible with. Like if my values are on display and you don't like them, it's better that we know that up front, right?
Yeah. No, there's a lot of great points you make for sure. And yeah, I think, specifically relating to that guy, like that makes a lot of sense in a number of ways as far as, the maturity level and the fact that, he was more focused on his looks and becoming more physically attractive and all this other stuff. It just seems like a lot of people who have faced, I've faced divorce too as a kid as well. So I went through that. I know how, you guys feel and all this other stuff. But it seems like people who face things like that, divorce or something related to that, they have initially, unless they kind of work through it or, they're immune to it, I guess, in some regards. A lot of people have that, though, where they think they're not good enough or they're looking for that acceptance. they're trying their best always to please other people, and they're very
Yeah.
they're self-esteem driven, like that, kind of like posting things on Facebook or Snapchat all the time, like that they need that acceptance from other people. And it's actually something I have worked through over the years, kind of many years ago when I went on my journey, probably around 18, 19, 20, around that age. I got over things like that, where having to, so be focused on what other people thought of me. But that's really one of the biggest ways is the looks thing. Like that's a huge thing for people, is looking as best as they can, and then forgetting about, the other aspects of your life, which are far more important. And I think this guy, with your help, of course, was able to do that. And then, like you said too, he's still growing, he's still maturing. But we all are. I mean, every single day we're all learning, we're all growing.
You better be.
Exactly. Yeah. The ride never ends. It's a constant learning process.
Looks are a really tricky one. So when my wife was really sick, it took her like 2 days to get ready for this, but she got her stuff together and went to it was my brother's. It was like his 40th birthday party. He had a big party, and no one had seen her for like 2 months. She was bedridden for a while of that. She had wasted away. So she has been this is end of August, so we're talking like 6-7 weeks from where she was really at her lowest. She put in the work. She got herself going so she could go to this big party. And the only comment anyone ever had to make was, "But she looked good." It's like, she can't possibly be, this can't be real. Like, she looked fine. Like, well, yeah, she put on makeup, and you know what? She's going to pay a price for coming out tonight. Like, it took her a good week to recover from getting the energy up for that, because she wasn't ready for it yet. Yeah. But all anyone could focus on is like, but her looks, like her looks are fine. It's like, well, she's beautiful. So yeah, like, she looks great, but that doesn't mean that she's okay inside. That doesn't mean she's not well. That doesn't mean that she's not suffering. So we do, as a society, like, we put looks above everything else. So it doesn't surprise me that people who are feeling broken inside or pain inside, whether they understand it or not, they immediately go to looks. And when we're in a situation we don't like or we're not sure about, we look to the way it presents. It's the surface level stuff. And that's what we got to break past in all dimensions if we actually want to start to make progress. Yeah,
no, I 100% agree, man. Brian, what diving into your book, I want to talk about the steps we can take today. This is obviously a big part of the book, I'm sure, but I want to talk about some of the other steps that we can take as far as how to live a better life every day. What are some of the other kind of key takeaways that you write about in the book?
So let me sandwich the motivation thing. So before motivation, if that's like the foundation, you don't build a building on marshland. You got to find solid ground. And the solid ground, I don't care if it sounds cheesy, it's self-love. Like, you have to have self-love first and foremost. And that's where so many of us fall down. And again, as a society, like, we self-deprecate all the time. So like, if you go to someone's house for dinner and compliment them on the food, $20, they're not just going to say thank you. They might say thank you, but they're going to immediately follow it up with, "Thanks, but I burnt the chicken," or I didn't salt the whatever," or I undercooked this. They're going to put it down in some way. Or people at work, it's all this like battle to see who slept less and worked later last night, and the winner is the one who got no sleep and worked 28 hours in a 24-hour day. It's like we reward ourselves for having it worse, and we put ourselves down. No one can take a compliment. If you take a compliment, you're an egotist. Well, I see this in my coaching all the time, especially in the career side, where people have really beaten themselves down, and I work to try to build them back up. Because if you don't see possibility in yourself, you don't see capability in yourself, and you don't see that you deserve doing better or having better, then there's no point to the rest of it. So first and foremost, you got to find self-love. And the really simple exercise I tell people is stop the but. So as soon as we get to something good and you want to go, "Yeah, but but that didn't matter," or "Yeah, but I screwed this up," just stop as soon as you think the word but. Just be like, "Yeah, you did well in college." "Yeah, but my school wasn't very good." "You did well in college." "Yeah." Leave it there. Or, like you have a lot of friends. "Yeah, but they kind of..." No, just you have a lot of friends. Yeah, which means people like you. So maybe you're not as terrible as you think you are. It's like, just allow these good things to be, and little by little that actually starts to change the way you think about yourself. So that's ground level. That solid ground is self-love. We talked about motivation, what matters to you above all else. Mm-hmm. Understand that value. And then the next thing is you got to set meaningful goals, and these are things that are going to push you, but not break you. So with weight loss is a really easy one because it's numerical, but I had 100 pounds to lose, or the second time around I had 45 pounds to lose. So a meaningful goal is not 5 pounds because that doesn't do anything for me. That's an interim step, but that's not what I'm trying to do.